we see now that we're in a time of crisis, we see over and over again that too many of us were disconnected in our Jewish education from how the Torah is actually supposed to inform our lives. So one of the things that we've been mostly telling people is, the Torah actually tells you how to run a country. You know that? That's a surprise. But it's people didn't know that. It was like I said, the Ted Ne'eman editorial page when the whole hit not kut thing happened. This is not an issue of the Torah. This is not a halachic issue. That whole business about digging up the graves, moving the cemetery from Gush Katif into Israel proper, that's a halachic question. Whether or not to have a hit not kut, that's not governed by halacha. That's an issue of politics. So that's foolish because the Torah actually says what you should do regarding Gush Katif. You're supposed to hold Eretz Yisrael and etc. Kibush haaretz, Yishuv haaretz. Those are actual halacha. Except many of us perhaps never even studied such a thing. We're unaware of such a thing. Maybe if you're aware, you didn't study. And even if you studied, you didn't realize it was actually for practice, even today. So these are related issues. How should the Jewish people conduct the war? How should the Jewish people conduct their state? How should the Jewish people relate to other nations in this world and hostile, subterrestrial, adjacent Jew haters? How should we deal with those types of people? These are all actually governed by halacha. That comes as a surprise to everybody. And that's why you have many people across the Jewish religious spectrum and political spectrum who can, I guess, in good conscience, vote for political parties time and time again that do not represent, or actually say it even better, political parties that are against that which the Torah wants us to do. They are explicitly declaring that they do not intend to keep the Torah and actually do what the Torah says not to do. They were going to ignore the Torah. And by the way, that applies to almost every single political party here in the land of Israel, including the so-called religious parties. Right? So that's a problem. So one of the things that people don't know, and I was clarifying this week, someone actually asked an honest question. He said that the king has certain prohibitions, right? What is the king not supposed to do? The king isn't supposed to have too many wives, as opposed to if you have a fantastically wealthy Jew who's not king, technically speaking, he can have as many wives as he can afford, as long as he can provide each of them with the basic rights that the Torah gives them. Right?
Aren't the Chachamim to only have 4?
No. That's a recommendation. Okay? No more than 4. The Rambam brings that. No more than 4. But if you're fantastically wealthy, you could have as many as you want, as many as you can handle. Now, the king is limited. He's up to 18. What does this teach us? And the king is only supposed to have a certain amount of horses. Lo yarbelo susim. Rak kedei mer kavto. Just enough for his chariot. Enough to get around. And he shouldn't enrich himself. Too much gold and silver. Chazal add, based on psukim in Mishlei, king's also not supposed to get drunk. Right? It's not supposed to. That's another prohibition he has. Fine. Now, someone told me, this was an interesting idea, that the prohibition against horses, for the king to stockpile horses, was actually tactically beneficial, because if you made your army reliant on cavalry, horseback soldiers, you make yourself vulnerable to some other form of attack, whatever it might be. Now, I'm not a tactician, but I do know that those who are running national defense in any country cannot rely on any one means of defense. For example, like the French did after World War I, or whoever else. They build up all sorts of systems, but the second your enemy just finds a way around the system or a better technology, your entire investment in that and reliance in that system of defense is useless. Like the Iron Dome, for example. People are showing me videos. Oh, look, the Iron Dome stopped the barrage of missiles from Hezbollah in the Lebanon. Great. They're just playing with you. Like Jonathan Pollard and others have been warning, if they would just increase the volume, which they can, in any one given instant, the Iron Dome would be overwhelmed. And the Iron Dome didn't help you on October 7th, right? They were too reliant on that. That's basically these fools who are half incompetent and half hubris. That's all they are, and that's akin to totally guilty. So they get whatever they brought this on us. The point is that you're saying that the horses thing is basically practical, this horse prohibition. I was pointing out that, with all due respect, that's not the way Chazal understood it. Chazal read in the Psukim and say that the king is not supposed to have too many personal horses for his own ride. That is, should have extra horses just for, well, kings have extra horses or just, more carriages, more chariots to be part of his entourage. But for national defense, it's totally fine. If the horses aren't for him to use personally, but for his army, because the army needs it or it's better for the army, matova manoim. It's the same thing as with gold and silver, Chazal say. And the Rambam Paskins this way. The gold and silver is not for the king to personally enrich himself. But if he were to use it for the people, national defense, or to distribute to the poor, or to give to the temple, like who did that, by the way? Who spent all his money first? Chazal say, in Tanakh it says King David used all his spoils and all his riches were given to what? To the temple. But, you read, he says, well, he also had to pay his soldiers. He also invested in national defense, and King David gave much to the poor. Okay? Either way, he didn't keep it for himself. All of those are perfectly valid reasons for a king to want to acquire wealth. Why? To distribute it to the right places. And as for having too many wives, no, there's no national defense of the king there. The king is not supposed to have too many wives, period. And because I'll say, even if his wives are of the caliber of Abigail, it says King David's wife was a prophetess, at least one of them. So even if all of them were like that, it's no excuse. Okay, no too many wives, and there's no redress there. Okay, so I hope that answers those questions.